The other week, I walked 50 miles in one day. I walked all the way from my hometown to central London, all in about 16 hours. And you know why I did that? Because I felt like it. So, this whole thing kind of came about when I was on the phone with my brother a few months ago. And we were both going through quite a challenging period. I'd just come to the end of uni. I was about to submit my final assignment. I've been working very hard on this for the last 4 or 5 months, and it counted for a large portion of my final grade. So obviously I wanted to finish it off to a high standard. That meant not getting much sleep, kind of having to devote all my time to that and not much else. And then my brother, he was studying for his exams, the most important exams of his life up to that point, the ones that determine here in this country whether you get to go to university or not. So he was quite stressed out about that. He'd been working very hard and was feeling a bit burnt out. So we were in kind of like a similar position in our lives at that point. So we were on the phone just talking about ways that we could kind of de-stress. Because we're into the same stuff. He's on self-improvement as well. We both like challenging ourselves, whether that's mentally or physically. And I entertained the idea of going on a hike. We can go on a hike together. We could fucking climb a mountain or something. But that kind of fell apart because, well, we live in the south. There's no mountains here. So I made a joke. I said, why don't we walk to London? It's something that literally went from a joke to like a minute later, why not? Why shouldn't we walk to London? Because I'm the type of person who hates to impose any type of restrictions on myself. I already hate people telling me what I can and can't do, like making judgments about my capabilities. But so the last thing I want to do is put any type of restrictions on myself and what I think I can do. So it was like, why the fuck couldn't we walk to London? Like, sure, this is a crazy idea. Maybe it's not that practical. We haven't really thought it through. But why the fuck not? What's stopping us? So, in under a week later, I was home and we were setting off in the morning on our travels to London, on our long 50-mile hike. And there was a catch to this whole thing that I have to explain. So, it wasn't an unlimited amount of time that we had to get there. We had to arrive in London by latest midnight because we'd have to get the train back, and trains don't run into the early hours of the morning. So if we didn't make it there by that time, we would essentially be stranded there for the night, and that's like a less than ideal set of circumstances when you've been walking for 16 hours. So yeah, that was quite stressful. So there was already like an extra element of pressure to it. So what happened next? So we planned the route with iMaps. We specifically picked this route that avoided busy roads because that would be boring. Who wants to just be walking along a motorway for 16 hours? We wanted to kind of go down the country roads. It might take a bit longer, but there'd be more variety. We get to kind of embrace the nature, which is something that we both like. And yeah, what I actually underestimated was the amount of fucking mud. Like, it must have rained like a few days before that, but bro, we were fucking ankle deep in mud. Like, it was fucking horrible. I had special walking boots, but my brother had like new shoes and they weren't waterproof at all. So he just had wet socks for like 90% of the journey. He didn't complain once though. But apparently these walking boots that I wore were not big enough for me. So I started getting like mad blisters. Like, my feet by the end of it were just like swollen to twice the size, and I had all these blisters. It felt like I was walking on glass, bro. But I shouldn't complain too much. Yeah, what ended up happening was we lost a lot of time going through the mud and the steep bits, and just the fact that we hadn't ever walked to London before. So obviously, like, we couldn't factor in like go in the wrong direction or something. Like, we were slowed down a lot, is what I'm trying to say. And unfortunately, we got to midnight and we hadn't got really even close to London. We got to the outskirts of London, which isn't bad, but so we probably got like about 75% of the way through. Hold on, it's really fucking sunny. Let me find a better angle. So yeah, where was I? We got to the outskirts of London, I'm not going to say where because I don't want you to find out where I live, but yeah, we ended up having to get the train back from there because there was no chance we were making it all the way to London from there. We still had about 12 miles, and well, that would have taken us until like fucking 4 a.m. in the morning. Obviously there's no trains there, so we had to call it a day, which was shit, to be honest. Like, we felt like we failed. We didn't do badly. We walked about 40 miles, but we didn't make it the whole way. Like, we wanted to get right into the center of London. Like, that seemed like where the real achievement was. So you better believe we weren't going to quit. You better believe we were going to do that again. So what we ended up doing was, a month later, when he'd finished his exams, I'd finished university, when we had nothing else to think about, we attempted it again. And this time we had a couple of advantages on our side. Mainly the fact that we knew the route, we were confident in it. It had been dry weather, so there wasn't really going to be any mud to worry about. And we set out earlier because we knew that kind of the estimated time, they said it was going to take 12 hours, but really it was about 16. The estimated time wasn't accurate, so we left earlier. We left early in the morning. And it went a lot smoother this time. We made it past that milestone of like the outskirts of London about 5 hours earlier. And we arrived on time. We got that last train back. It wasn't easy by any means, but we did it. That's a proud achievement to look back. When I tell people this story, they either think I'm lying, they think I'm making some weird joke or trying to impress them, or they seem a bit freaked out. They kind of get a bit cynical. They begin to question why I'm even doing a thing like that. Like, they almost look a bit disgusted, like, why would you spend your time doing something like that? Like, what's the point? And the irony here is that these people who are questioning why I have the time to go and do something like that are the ones who are not valuing their time at all. They're the same motherfuckers who have like 8 hours screen time every day, who spend half the time like scrolling through TikTok, or they're addicted to video games. It's like, you have the audacity to question me about what I do with my time. I'm joking, but the point is, there's value in being a bit spontaneous. You don't always need a reason to do something. You don't have to schedule every minute of your day. Sometimes it's nice to just live in the moment, you know? Just take things as they come. It doesn't mean, obviously it doesn't mean like play video games just because you feel like it. And I'm gonna explain why that's a bit different. But this experience for me and my brother, we didn't really go into it with any type of concrete reason. We just knew it was gonna be good for us. You could argue that we knew it was gonna strengthen our bond, or like, we knew it was going to be like a good challenge for us, but those aren't the reason. We just didn't really have one, if that makes sense. And do you know what? I really can't recall a time when I've laughed as much as I did that day. I can't recall a time in the last 2 years where I had that much fun just doing something simple, where I felt so kind of present and in the moment and without a care. That's the value in being a bit spontaneous. You don't really stand to lose anything. If I told you right now to just drop and give me 500 push-ups, what do you stand to lose? You don't have to like start getting all cynical about it, like, oh, my chest will hurt. You're literally getting fitter. You're proving to yourself that you can be disciplined, that you're not a bitch, and you can endure a bit of pain. You literally stand to lose nothing. If I even if during that walk I'd fallen and twisted my ankle, I still consider that a positive, because I've come out of it with a story. I'm a more interesting person for having gone through that experience. Oh, I twisted my ankle a few weeks ago. Oh yeah, how'd you do that? I was walking to London. Like, who is this crazy motherfucker who's walking to London? Who is this guy? He seems like a more interesting person than me. A lot of people complain about having a boring life, or not having any interesting stories to tell, that it feels like nothing ever happens to them, that they haven't struggled. If that's you, you've got to invent the struggle. You've got to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations. You can't just wait around for things to happen to you. You don't have to have been born into poverty, into like a third world country or something. Because you don't have to come from that background to know the value of suffering and putting yourself in those situations. That's what I've done. I've taken the action. I haven't sat around and waited for something to happen to me. I've kind of constructed this whole thing. I've acted on this crazy impulse that I've had. I took a risk. I dared to actually do something, and it's paid off. You can act on crazy impulses like that all you like, but me and my brother could have given up like 5 miles in. To tell you the truth, as soon as I got to the next town onwards, that was probably about like 5-6 miles in, I felt like giving up. I felt like going back to bed, but I kept up with it. Seeing something like that through to the end, that's discipline. That's how you build mental toughness. It's a great thing to be able to test yourself, to be able to see how you respond once you face some real adversity, to put yourself through these like simulated kind of scenarios, things that you've created for yourself. It's a bit like fighting, like training martial arts. You're training yourself for the scenario that may or may not happen. You might have to defend yourself in the street, you might have to protect your family, and the way you prepare for that is through sparring, like doing like a controlled version of that particular form of adversity. There's value to be had in that. Same thing with like Navy SEAL training, where only 5% of the recruits actually complete the training because it's so difficult. They're the only people who can be trusted to survive out in the war. They're the only people who can endure, who've proven that they can endure that type of pain and survive those circumstances. The true value of experiences like these, like walking to London, things that build up your mental resilience and toughness, things that, I'm not fucking bigging myself up here, just things that the average man wouldn't do. Who's gonna walk 50 miles in one day? If you can match that, then fair play to you, you've got my respect. But they prove that I am who I say I am. Not just prove to everyone else, they prove to me. I have this experience that you can't take away from me. Something that I can look back on when I go into the future with all the adversity that I may encounter, all the problems that I may end up having, all the challenges that I may encounter. I know that I can get through that because I've walked to London. So go out there and find your equivalent. Act on your crazy idea. It's got to be something that is both physically and mentally demanding that most people wouldn't do. But I want you to act on it and come back here and tell me, because I'm fascinated to hear about what you're getting up to. Take care, bro.